So now we're going to talk about sewing on beads and sequins. I'm going to show you different ways of sewing on beads and sequins. So first thing is important is your needle. I found quite a small needle, but I'm going to check to see if they go through the holes of the beads. So definitely this one works. And I was intending to use some of these little silver ones. It goes through, no problem. However, sometimes if you're using tiny little seed beads to sew the sequins on, a needle, although this is small, it's not that small, and it might not go through here. Let's have a look. No, you can see it gets stuck. So you would have to use the finest needle. In fact, there's something called a bead needle that is a pain to thread, but will go through the tiniest little seed beads. But we're not using those, so I know this needle will work. So it is worth working out if the needle you're using is going to be okay for the size of the beads. So different ways of sewing on beads. So the first way you can sew on a sequin, you can either, so if I sew it on here, you come up, have a knot at the end and come up where you want the sequin to go. So just bring it up. So come up, put your... Now, different ways of sewing. So you can just use a thread. So if you just want to have no bead in the middle, you want it to be flat and not catch on anything, I've got to taken one stitch across and I've come up again in the center and I'm going to go in the middle. So that is one way of sewing on your sequin. So it goes across like this. If you only sew on one side, it might flick over, so it's better to put two stitches going right across. And maybe I shall put a little bead in the center there. So a bead is simple. All you have to do is, which one should we use? We'll use one of those. Maybe use one of these little silver ones. And basically you just stitch next to it. Now, if you want to have them randomly placed, you then will need to finish off sewing on the bead. So if you are just doing one, I would recommend going through twice. Make it strong. So I'll go through once more, so it's nice and strong if it's a single bead. And then from the back, go through the little stitch once more. Where you've got the loop, put your needle through the loop and pull and make your knot. And I always go over twice. Then I would cut and start again. If you don't like tying knots at the end, another way you can start the thread is take a little stitch, tiny little stitch, and do a back stitch over it. And I'm doing it from the front because it's not going to be seen, because the sequin is going to hide it. Now, another way of sewing on a sequin, and this can look really beautiful as a contrast, is you can take a bead. It can be a different colour. I've just been looking, I don't actually have any purple beads, but if I had a purple bead, I would put a little purple bead in the centre, but as it is, I've got these lovely little silver pearlized beads that also look smart with it, so I'll use that. So there's my bead, and all I have to do is go back into the hole of the sequin, and the bead acts as a knot and holds the sequin on. And then I'm going to continue, create another. Now, if you are, I'm going to bead along here, and I need the same type of beads. If you get the lid, or just a little saucer, and pop your beads on here, you'll then don't have to keep diving into the bag, and you create a flow, because you want it, you'll catch a rhythm. There's a rhythm to beading. Once you start, you just get the pace. So pull it along, pick up your sequin, take another bead, go down into the hole again, and so on. And then I'll fill it up like this. Now, one more way. So if you've got a big bead like this, can you see, big bead like this one, I think I'm going to actually, so I'm just going, so I want to come up here. If I came up straight like this, it's quite a gap, and chances are it would get loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some stitches on the backing fabric, so that when I want to come up here, you see, it's nice and strong, and there isn't going to be a big loop of thread on the back. Now, when it's a big bead like this, this is when it's better to do 2 to 3 stitches to hold it down, because it's a heavier bead and you want to try and keep it as tight as possible. So I recommend for the big beads 2 to 3 times through the hole. On a little bead, if you're continuing along, once will do and then come up again. If you're going to do random beads, it's always better to go through at least twice before you finish off each time. So that's how you can sew on beads and sequins.